I'm Kieran Brigden, the Studio Communications Manager for the Creative Assembly. It's the studio behind Shogun 2 Total War. Shogun 2 is very much the successor to the original Shogun, the game that 10 years ago started the entire Total War series. Shogun 2 kind of incorporates all of the real kind of key features of Total War games that we've come to know and enjoy over the series, so the kind of combination of real-time and turn-based strategy. But it's the details where Shogun 2 stands out and differs from previous titles. A good example is the kind of RPG element on the campaign map, so whereby agents can now gain skills that are chosen by the player based on experience they gain through successful actions on the campaign map. In addition to that, of course, we also have a brand new way of visualizing the world, so we have this kind of 2D, 3D combination campaign map, which is a really nice way to represent things and give you a real sense of exploration and sort of depth to the game. The other thing, of course, is in its technical kind of capability and aspects. We've gone back to melee fighting. We've massively increased the number of units that you can see on screen during your battles. And the final main point, I guess, from a gameplay point of view, is that we now have sea battles which also combine a land element into them. So you'll fight a lot of your sea engagements around the coast of Japan. So you'll have to deal with kind of all these rocks and shoals and beaches and coves and inlets, and all of these things have to be fought around and used properly. So as well as having kind of, you know, a very revamped kind of a land battle experience, an extremely intense and dramatic experience from that angle, we also now have a very different naval battle and engagement experience, as well as kind of a radically overhauled and somewhat aesthetically more pleasing campaign map. For me, my favourite agent types on the campaign map are, I'm a bit of a Machiavellian player, so I prefer the kind of slightly more subtle way of doing things as opposed to sort of like the mailed fist, as it were, of armies. So I really enjoy using the ninja and the Metsuke agents. So the ninja is fairly self-explanatory. He's a fairly top-end spy or assassin, depending on how you kind of build him up and what kind of ranks you give him. And the Metsuke is kind of a secret policeman type agent. So his job is basically to repel enemy infiltrators and at the same time bribe and corrupt enemy captains, generals and cities and bring them over to your faction. So with a combination of these kind of two characters, you can really kind of do some real damage to your enemies without ever even, you know, openly declaring war on them. So that's the kind of way I like to play. I mean, obviously, you know, for the kind of more traditional players and those guys who really go for the war element of it, then of course, you know, the generals will be your best friend. One of the new mechanisms in Shogun 2 is the honor and loyalty system. The clan has an honor as a whole, so the actual faction that you play has an honor value, which is increased and decreased by your actions. And one of the things that honor affects is loyalty. So you can see all of your characters and your generals, indeed your family members as well, your sons and daughters, have a degree of loyalty towards you as a faction. And this goes up and down depending on the way you treat them and what you do. A good example of where this can go right or wrong is with your generals. Your generals, if they feel underappreciated, their loyalty will begin to drop. When it drops to a certain point, they'll be basically subject to potentially being bribed over by an enemy Metsuke, or potentially even going, you know, rogue and going their own way. So you then get the option, if you wish, to demand that they commit seppuku or ritual suicide. It translates, I think, as belly cutting. But basically, these guys then actually choose whether or not to kill themselves at your command. If they do, then the honor of your clan as a whole is increased, and you lose this general. But you know, his kind of action testifies that you'll do whatever you're told in a faction like yours. Or he can choose to go Ronin, and when he does that, he'll take a percentage of the army with him, and then suddenly you've got a very angry, pissed off general running around in the middle of your empire. So there's a number of different kind of interesting techniques and tactics you can use to really kind of change things on the campaign map. One of the big things that we wanted to do with Shogun 2 was get a real sense of narrative and story to the game, and that only works if the story is yours, if it's different depending on what you do. And so as a result, we have a very dynamic kind of movie and speech system. So when your generals give speeches in battles, those speeches are heuristically created depending on the history between yourself and the enemy faction. So you may have fought, you know, 4 or 5 different battles against them. You may have been fought against them for many years. This general may have, you know, fought in battle against them and won before. He'll refer to all of those kind of things when he's about to kind of enter combat, and he'll try and inspire his troops with all those aspects. Equally, your general can be a complete loon, and he'll give a burbling mess of a speech which will leave everyone terrified and feeling like they're being led by a madman. But the dynamic aspect of that is to really make it feel like what you've done has had an impact on how these characters are created and the way they, you know, impart their kind of wisdom, as it were, to your own forces. When it comes to the movie element as well, when you kind of commit an action on the campaign map to, say, an enemy agent, you'll have a number of different different outcomes. Sometimes your agent will succeed, sometimes they'll fail, other times they'll fail and escape or not escape. And there's a number of different ways that these kind of movies are put together. So even though you may have seen the start of something, that doesn't necessarily tell you how it's going to end. There are multiple points in which the agent can fail, succeed, be caught, or indeed get away. So it's always worth watching just to see in case you get something brand new as an outcome. I guess the top three things for Shogun 2 Total War are: one, the kind of traditional, awesome, massive Total War battles, with thousands and thousands of troops smashing into each other in these really cinematic kind of engagements across the battlefield. That's what we're absolutely known for. So that's definitely a number one. Number two is putting you into history's one of coolest eras. So you're looking after kind of the Civil War era of Japan, which is kind of the warrior ethos and the warrior spirit at its absolute most purified and advanced. The sense of honor and dignity and respect and martial discipline, samurais and ninjas, you name it. It's an incredibly interesting and albeit cool period of history. And I guess finally, probably one of the most the big things about Total War for me, and one of the most exciting things for gamers, is you do it your way. It's very simple to get into. It's a very nice kind of slow start that you grow from the ground up, this tiny little acorn of an empire, until, so many hours in, you're suddenly governing almost all of the Japanese islands. You have vast armies that are being sent off to all corners of the known world as you can see it on your map, and you're meeting other factions and you're entering into wars and diplomacy with them. It's that sheer sense of scale and choice, and that's what Total War is all about. It's about the freedom to play with history and just rewrite the destiny of the world, and that's very much what we look forward to giving gamers, and we hope you'll enjoy.